G'day fellas, and welcome to another tier list. In this tier list, we're going to be taking a look at where the meta currently sits, considering we have just finished up with N4C qualifications. Now, for those of you guys that have missed it, the whole video, or all of the videos have been posted up now from the tournament, so there will be spoilers in this video, so make sure you go back and watch them if you're not keen on hearing those spoilers. But yes, we're here to discuss essentially what happened there, where civilizations currently sit at the moment in the meta, and sort of how that translates into quick match at the moment as well. So I guess we can begin just by congratulating the people who got through. For anybody unfamiliar with N4C, it's a $100,000 tournament being hosted in Germany. So when this video goes live, it's going to be quite some time. So I think at the moment for me, it is the 22nd of February. So this video should go live probably around the 4th of March, the 3rd of March, by which time I'm already going to be in Germany. So, you know, say hello to German Drongo. I'm still Australian Drongo, or I guess Aussie Drongo. But I'll be German Drongo very soon, so I'm going to be going over there. I am going to be casting in person, so I'm going to leave links down in the description to everything you need to know about that. But I encourage you guys, make sure you check out the streams because it's going to be absolutely awesome. We've got the Viper, we've got the Muslim, we've got Vortex, we've got the Mister, we have got the biggest players in the game right now, Lucifron, just a whole bunch of people who also got through in the recent event. You guys would have seen all those games coming through. So I tell you what, it's going to be an absolutely... I can't even think of words. I'm just looking incredibly forward to it because it's going to be, you know, massive. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's get into it. So one of the civilizations that you would be familiar with, or being a little bit lower down on the tier list last time, would have been the Abbasid Dynasty. So I think we called these guys D tier last time. So they're not even C tier this time. They are B tier this time. The Abbasid Dynasty was a civilization that people were willing to take quite often. We saw Abbasid Dynasty picked up multiple times in first games that people were playing. So, you know, you'd play on Dry Arabia. We would see them pick up the Abbasid Dynasty on Dry Arabia. And I think that's because the Abbasid Dynasty are quite a safe pick. They've got a very safe game plan, a very clear route to victory. So obviously going up with the economic wing, it's incredibly important that you do that. And it always leaves the door open to a potential boom to happen. And that is sort of the win condition for the Abbasid Dynasty. So obviously there's a couple different ways you can play them. But in my opinion, there's only really one if you want to win. And that's to make a second town center. And the question is just about when you add that second town center. But we've seen that now the buffs to the Abbasid Dynasty has really taken them to the next level. They are a lot more viable as a civilization. And as a result, it means that they sit now up in the B tier. But a civilization that wasn't up that high before, a civilization that was quite high before, but has come down. In fact, had quite a spectacular fall from grace. I'm sure you guys know exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the Chinese. These guys, I think in our last tier list, we probably looked at them and said they're A tier, but now they are looking at C tier. Very, very rarely is this civilization picked up, if at all. There just seems to be a civilization that is always going to be in a better position when you are, you know, when you're playing on your map. You're like, well, why would I pick the Chinese when I can pick the Holy Roman Empire, or I can pick the Delhi, or I can pick the English? You know, if it comes to Mountain Pass, well, I'm just going to pick the English every time. If it comes to Hill and Dale, I'll just pick Delhi. If it comes to Danube River, I'm just going to pick the Holy Roman Empire. There's just not a lot of good maps for the Chinese at the moment, and as a result, it means they're very, very, very slow to get going. So we saw a whole bunch of buffs, a whole bunch of nerfs coming through for the Chinese. We saw their Imperial Official that was nerfed behind the scenes, so this wasn't something that was in the patch notes. We saw their Astronomical Clock Tower that was nerfed, but still, you know, they're just a civilization at the moment that, while they can get ahead with their Song Dynasty, it is typically a civilization that is rarely ahead, just because of the fact it's got those dynasties and it's quite a bit to invest into them. And Imperial Officials at the moment, they're not the strongest units. In fact, I would say they are very weak, incredibly bugged. They just continue to have so many bugs, the Imperial Officials, and still haven't really been fixed. I think they fixed up one bug in the last patch. It was about a list as long as my hair. And I got pretty long hair, let me tell you that much. Not really. Not really. But it's a long list of bugs that need to be fixed for those bad boys. So, yeah, it's unfortunate to see China dropping down this far, but it is the way. But on the other side of things, we've got the Delhi Sultanate. Now, the Delhi Sultanate have been one of those civilizations that has continued to see buffs, despite their strengths. And as a result, it sits in the S tier. I think this is a very safe assumption. The Delhi Sultanate is a pick that is appropriate on many maps. If you've got the option to play Delhi, it's always going to be a good thing. The way I like to think about it, especially when you're going into these tournament games, is you've sort of got like cards in your hand, like a deck of cards, and you can choose which card you want to play. And you do that based on the map that is in front of you. And, you know, your enemy might say, all right, well, I'm going to play Hill and Dale. Well, you can play the Delhi there. I'm going to play Danube River. Well, I can play the Delhi there. I can play pretty much any map. I can play the Delhi there. And that's what makes the Delhi so strong. Incredibly versatile civilization. We used to remember this civilization as being a strong hybrid civilization, but now it's just become a powerhouse everywhere. Buffs to berries have sort of taken it to the next level. And yeah, I mean, we've seen quite a lot of changes to the Delhi that have really buffed them up. And those same changes have obviously brought the Abbasid Dynasty up as well. But obviously when you buff the bonuses that these two civs get together, then at the same time it's going to bring the Delhi up. And as a result, it just means they are supreme. Now, there are a few maps where they wouldn't be picked, where there would be another civilization picked instead of the Delhi, and we'll talk a little bit more about them. But at the moment, these guys are just incredibly difficult to stop because they run, or they have got so much tempo in the early game. That's essentially it. They're always looking to close out the game. You know what? They don't even need to close out the game just because of the way that they play. But they're always looking to gain that lead in the early game. And if you cannot stop them from getting all the sacred sites, you're just going to be behind constantly, just simply because they've got that gold generation that is pumping it out. They've got the free upgrades that are going to kick in. So an incredibly strong civilization, and we've started to see people learning to abuse the compound of the defender. This is a landmark that we initially called F tier. It's slowly worked its way up. I think probably at the moment I'd say it's sitting at about A tier. So yeah, that's the Delhi for you guys. The other S tier civilization, as I'm sure you wouldn't be surprised, it is the Mongols. We'll put them a little bit ahead of the Delhi. This civilization continues to be the best civilization in the game, in my opinion. It's got way too much tempo from the beginning of the game with the Uvu into the barracks or Uvu into the stable. I mean, we've mainly been just seeing barracks recently. They are allowed to get ahead of every other civilization very easily. I want you to think about, you know, if you're fighting somebody in the Dark Age, the Mongols are able to make 4 sets of spears. Now, each set of spears, they have to spend 60 food and 20 wood. So you add that up over the course of a Dark Age period, right? So we're just going to go with 4 as our base. That's 250 food. That's 80 wood that the Mongols do not have to collect because they've got an Uvu. That's it, because their Uvu allows that batch training. So it means that your enemy is always going to be behind you by 240 food and 80 wood. And that's the different for the Mongol civilization. You know, that's basically an age up. I mean, you're talking about 320 resources there. That's a huge amount of resources that you need to age up. And typically we're going to see people on the opposite side of the map investing those resources into spears to defend against the rush that's coming in. So tower rushes are the most common thing that we will see in that situation, in that scenario. And it means that the Mongols just remain king on so many maps. You know, Dry Arabia, King of the Hill, Lipany, Highview, any of these sort of open maps, they're just going to be almost impossible to stop. On the closed maps like Altai, it's a little bit more difficult for the Mongols to have pressure, just because the town center does such a great job of stopping units coming by, combined with the natural, not the natural resources, but the natural geology of the map. You know, it's got large rock formations out to the side. But the Mongols, an incredibly strong civilization. So now we're going to take a look at some of the other civilizations that we've got. So the English, a civilization that has risen, in my opinion, currently sits in the A tier. So people are sort of catching on to this whole English fast wheelbarrow build. So basically what the English can do, so, you know, typically civilizations have got ways that they can speed up their economy. If we look at the Abbasid Dynasty, it's by adding in a second town center with fresh foodstuffs. With China, it's going for their dynasty. You know, with the Delhi, it would be taking those sacred sites. With the French, they've got that natural bonus. With the Holy Roman Empire, it's about getting up to the castle age and bringing in those relics. But the English, they don't really have anything, right? Well, that's what you think. what people have sort of realized is if you go wheelbarrow on the English really early, you can actually combo that with farms. And it enables your farms to be a lot more efficient, and you can start that in the early game. And so we've begun to see players going up towards 20, 24 farms, even before 10 minutes as the English. And so what is happening here is that even though you've got, less villagers than your opponent may, because they might be in the Song Dynasty, or they might be playing French, or, they might have collected a few more relics because they're in the castle age, your villagers are actually worth more per point because they are on a more efficient... what's the word? They're just more efficient at the moment. So obviously the English have farming bonuses, but also they've got the cheaper farms, and then you throw in the wheelbarrow upgrade as well, and that's really where it starts to be impressive. So this was something that I think we saw Don Artie sort of pioneer, and now it's become very, very standard that we're seeing players do this. And so the English play style, it's kind of aggression, but at the same time booming behind it. And it's a very easy build as well to be constantly adding in, because you're only paying 37 wood a farm. So every time you've got 37 wood spare, you're just throwing down another farm. And your enemy, they might be in a position where they have to transition into farms. They're going to be looking at paying thousands of wood. Behind this the whole time, you've just been dropping down those farms, and that's really where the strength of English comes in. Obviously, once you get to the late game as well, they've got the best, or some of the best men-at-arms in the game. Very, very versatile. Obviously, the Holy Roman Empire men-at-arms are pretty good as well, but very, very versatile. Longbows, incredibly efficient. They've got some great landmarks in the King's Palace and the Berkshire Palace. Did I say... Yeah, the King's Palace and the Berkshire Palace. So both really good landmarks as well for the English. And a pretty stunning, stellar late game. We've also begun to see the rise of the Trebuchet. And you guys will know that the shattering projectiles technology is unique to the English. So that is definitely something to look out for. We may potentially have 16 range mangonels. At least it kind of feels like that. I don't know. We'll have to watch. We'll have to wait. We'll have to see how it continues to unfold. But yeah, I'm very satisfied to say that they are currently sitting in the A tier. Next civilization that's sitting in the A tier, it is the French. Put them a little bit ahead of the English. Another versatile civilization. We've begun to see a fall off in professional scouts. So people aren't going for professional scouts as much as they used to. But we are seeing players begin to rely a little bit more on the landmark in the Third Age. I'm trying to remember. You've got the Guild Hall and you've got the Chamber of... No, not the Chamber of Commerce. That's the second one. Anyway, I don't want to get too stun locked on that, but it's essentially the landmark that enables you to access all the research in the Castle Age. And so we've started to see a little bit more all-ins with this landmark. So I think people are slowly waking up to this. So, that landmark combined with 20, 22, 23 of the veteran Royal Knights, it's just incredibly strong, very difficult to stop. So we've started to see that, but just in general, French have always been a very versatile civ, a strong civilization, always good as a first pick as well. If you don't know what your enemy is going to play, so I'm talking quick match here. Let's say you come into a game on Arabia and you're not too confident in your Mongols, and you're thinking they might pick Delhi. You don't want a mirror match because you're not confident with that. Well, you can pick France. France is a great civilization for those open maps. Obviously has the ability to be killing villages very, very quickly. So as a civilization, I think it sits very safely in the A tier, even though we have continued to see a trend away from professional scouts. The next civilization that sits in the A tier, it's the Holy Roman Empire. I'm going to put this civilization even above the French. And this civilization has seen an absolutely stellar rise. Just a very few small buffs has seen it come out to be an incredibly strong civilization. So what buff am I talking about? I'm talking about the Prelate. So the Prelate was buffed up, increased the range of its area, or of its Inspire effect. It used to be 3 tiles, now it's 4 tiles, so it can inspire a little bit further. And then on top of that, the big thing is the movement speed. And you might be thinking, it's not that big of a deal, Drongo. It is. It is a big deal because it enables you to get out onto the maps, get those relics a little bit quicker than what you would have before, and bring them back a little bit quicker than you would have before. And the difference between you having, say, 2 or 3 relics, or 1 and 2 relics, or even 1 and 3 relics, it's absolutely massive. And that little speed boost helps them out so much. The reason why the Holy Roman Empire are such a strong civilization is because of their reliance on the Regnitz Cathedral, and because of the fact that if they manage to get those 3 relics in the Regnitz, or even 2 relics, it seems, that's going to power them up enough to get up to the 4th age. And once they get into the 4th age, it's very difficult to stop them just because of how strong the Palace of Swabia is. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some Palace of Swabia nerfs, some Regnitz Cathedral nerfs. One change that I really liked to see for the Palace of Swabia was just having its cost returned, or having it put back to what a normal landmark is in Age 4. That way it just kind of slows them down a little bit. I know that that's part of like the design of the landmark, but we see, you know, Holy Roman Empire players getting up routinely at like 10 minutes 30 to Imperial Age. And I don't know if it's healthy for the game. So, you know, just allowing them to sort of, or delaying them a little bit, I think is going to be great. Also, another change I'd love to see for the Regnitz Cathedral, allow it to hold 5 relics, so give it a buff, enabling it to go from 3 to 5, which means you don't need the monastery to hold the other 2, but reduce the gold income that you get from relics. Instead of 300 gold a minute, change it down to 200 gold a minute. That way it makes it less impactful on getting those 3 relics, and then more about just fighting for relics, sort of like how the other civilizations have to do. And by doing that, you also make the other landmark that they've got access to, the Burgrave Palace, you also make that a bit more viable by doing that. So I think that's a good route to look at for the Holy Roman Empire when it comes to balance. But I guess when it comes to how they currently sit, they sit incredibly well because they are somewhat similar to the Delhi. When you're fighting against the Delhi, you have to fight against their sacred sites. You must deny their sacred sites. You need to be constantly thinking about them. And it is a fluid status with the sacred sites. You can go out and contest the sacred sites. If they do capture them, you can take them back. If they capture them, you know, you can go out there and neutralize them. The problem is with the Holy Roman Empire, you've got one chance to fight them for those relics. And if you do not get those relics before they do, you're in trouble. You're in real trouble. I would say at the moment that if you are a Holy Roman Empire player and you manage to secure 3 relics, you probably win like 85% of your games. I genuinely mean that, and I think that is a bit of an issue. But at the same time, you know, I think it's interesting, but it's very one-dimensional when it comes to their playstyle. We've seen a lot of cool build orders coming out with this civilization as well. We've seen it being an incredibly strong civ on Danube River, aka Mississippi River. That's what I like to call it. So that is always something to consider. But speaking of considerations, let's talk about our last civilization here. You might think that this one's going in the A tier as well, but it's not. It's actually going in the B tier. Now, there's a caveat to this, and I will say I'm not including their Boulder Bay performances. By the end of the N4C qualifying, I was absolutely fed up watching Rus on Boulder Bay because it was all people picked. People saved the Rus for Boulder Bay. But often you would see the map banned out, or players wouldn't choose Boulder Bay as a home map, and it would mean that people would have a bit more freedom with the civilization. It was rare that we saw it outside of Boulder Bay, the Rus. And I think that's quite for good reason as well. So as mentioned with regard to the French, we have seen a decline when it comes to professional scouts. Professional scouts aren't as good as they used to be, aren't as strong as they used to be. I still definitely think there's a place in the meta for them. I just think that, you know, before the professional scout change happened, every single game, every civ was going for professional scouts. Now it's not that case. Now it's, you know, people are actually going, oh, well, do I need it? You know, maybe I can put a mill up on that. Maybe I can actually try and get map control and then put a mill out on my deer, or mill up my berries or something like that. So people are actually looking to spend those resources in a different place. And so I think that's made the Rus a little bit weaker. We've also seen a new technology come through. Not newer technology, but the Trebuchet. The Trebuchet was buffed in the most recent patch, and we've started to see players realize how strong this is. We've seen games where people like Viper, we've seen games where Lee Nock have used Trebuchets, or had them used against them, in incredibly amazing ways. And, you know, typically we used to think of the Trebuchet as this sort of late game, you know, it's just a Trebuchet, like, what an idiot, this guy's making Trebuchets. Now it's really not that case. They actually have a purpose. I think the Trebuchet exists where it is too dangerous for you to make bombards, and that is if you do not have siege superiority. I think if you've got siege superiority, it is okay to make bombards. If you do not have siege superiority, then I think it's important to fall back into Trebuchet. So you might be wondering, what's siege superiority? So you need to think about playing against the Rus, and this is where it sort of comes into where the discussion is. When you're playing up against the Rus are a civilization that loves to get to the 4th age and get their Springles out. 13.5 range. That is what they absolutely love to do. And that snipes bombards very effectively. So every civilization's got only 10 range bombards except for the Chinese, but obviously China not the strongest civ at the moment, so you're not going to be seeing that a lot. And the Springles are easily able to snipe the bombards before they can kill the keeps. What people have worked out is, well, if I make trebuchets, it's much harder for you to snipe those trebuchets. Obviously, you still can do that, but there becomes a lot more skill involved in doing so. And as a result, it weakens the position of the Rus because people have sort of caught on, well, hold on, I can make trebuchets against the Rus, and that kind of solves my problem. And so that's where we have seen the decline of the Rus because, you know, we did see them originally up at S tier, then dropping down to A tier. Now they are down in B tier. So a civilization to continue watching. Obviously, they've had their horse archers nerfed quite a while ago. But that is essentially it. That is your wrap up. That is the post N4C qualifiers wrap up. Now, fellas, before we finish this, I just want to say to you guys, N4C, it's going to be going for quite a while. So I'm going to leave a link in the description to where you can actually find the stream for N4C. I want you guys to go check that out. Make sure you go subscribe because there's going to be intense action. Production quality is going to be through the roof. We are down on the ground offline. And you know what it means by offline. I mean, technically we're not offline, but we are offline. As in, like, we're there. We're having a LAN. You remember the good old days of LAN? You know, bring over your laptop or God forsaken, bring over your computer and your monitor. Oh, God. And remember, sometimes you have to carry the giant monitors as well. Oof, jeez. Long gone are those days. Well, fellas, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are with regard to the tier list. And as always, just remember, if you disagree, that doesn't necessarily mean that, that I'm wrong. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'm right either. That is why there are differences of opinion. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.